Hi everyone, this is your practice problems video on slopes of parallel and perpendicular lines. So this first question has a lot of parts to it, but this is where the bulk of the solving and the math is going on. So the other questions in here are more multiple choice type questions. So you'll be able to see how we take these ideas and answer multiple choice questions with these ideas. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into it. So the way that this is going to work is I'm going to do one and then I'll give you a chance to try one, right? We'll kind of go back and forth on this, okay? So at the beginning here, this very first one says, I want to write an equation of a line that is parallel to this line, y equals negative 4x minus 1, with a new y-intercept of negative 5. Okay, so in my new equation, this is b. Okay, remember for parallel, the rule is that the slopes are the same. Okay, so all I need to do is take the slope from the original equation. Remember, I don't care about the y-intercept. Okay, so what I have now is I have my slope. If my original slope was negative 4, then my new slope is also negative 4. So m equals negative 4 and b equals negative 5. So I'm just going to combine those two things, right? Remember, my equation of a line is y equals mx plus b. Right? And I left some blanks so that we could fill those values in. So m is negative 4, okay, and b is negative 5. Right? So my very last thing that I need to do here is I have, see this plus minus right here, so I need to get rid of that. So my final answer here is y equals negative 4x minus 5. Okay, and that is it. That is my final answer. That's my final equation. Okay, so I want you to give part B a try. It's the same equation with the same y-intercept, but remember this one is perpendicular. So the rule is that the slopes are opposite reciprocals. Right? Remember that's the rule. So how you achieve that is you flip the fraction and change the sign. Okay, all right, so pause this video, see if you can figure out part B on your own, and then check back to see the answer. All right, folks, so for part B, you should have gotten the final equation of y equals 1/4 x minus 5. Okay, so if my original slope in the original equation was negative 4, right, there's no fraction for me to flip because this is a whole number. So if that's ever the case, take the number that you have and write it over 1, right? Because any number divided by 1 is the same number, right? You can write any number as a fraction if you do it divided by 1. Okay, so then what I had to do next was flip these numbers, right? So 1 went to the top and 4 went to the bottom. And since the original slope was negative, the new slope is positive, right? And then I just dropped the plus sign once I wrote it in my actual equation, right? And they gave me the y-intercept of negative 5, so I just plug that into your y equals mx plus b equation. All right, so let's take a look at this next type here. Okay, so this is one where you have where you're given a point and a slope. So I'm going to do point slope form for this one, but you can do it the other way. If you remember in the notes video that I did the examples where you have a point and a slope, I did them two different ways, right? The point slope form, or the point slope method, and the slope intercept method. Remember, when I give you two methods to do something, pick the one that makes the most sense to you, but I'm going to use the point slope method. That's what I'm going to use, okay? So let's try this one out. Okay, so I have my point, right? Negative 1, 4, so that's like x1 and y1. Okay, and then it's this new one has to be parallel to y equals negative 7x minus 5. So remember, I'm just pulling out the slope of this original line. I don't care about anything else, okay? And my point slope form of a line is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, okay? So what I'm writing in red on the screen right now is the numbers that you would have to fill in, okay? So I have x1, y1, and remember, if they're parallel, the slopes are equal, equal slopes, okay? So that means that m equals negative 7, x1 equals negative 1, and y1 equals 4. So we're going to take those values and plug them in right up here in my point slope forms. You have y minus, y1 is 4, so y minus 4 equals negative 7 times x minus, and then x1 is negative 1. Okay, so just like when we did distance formula, you always want to start with like x minus something, and then if you have two negative signs right next to each other, you can then change them to plus signs, okay? When you're doing these types of problems, you really have two steps that you have to follow, okay? So step 1 is distributive property. Step 2 is get y by itself, okay? So you have y minus 4 equals negative 7 times x is just negative 7x. Negative 7 times positive 1 is negative 7. Okay, so that's step 1, distributive property. Step 2 is get y by itself. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides to cancel this 4 out. So you end up with y is equal to negative 7x minus 3. And that is your final answer. Okay, so just like how I did A, you tried B, we're going to do this the same way. So I did C. I want you to try D. So pause the video, try this one out, and I'll see you back here in a couple of minutes to check your answer. All right, folks, so check your answer against mine. So I got y equals negative 3 halves x minus 3. So if I'm looking at what they gave me in the problem, my equation that they gave me was negative 3 halves x plus 1. So remember, I don't care about the plus 1. I just care about the slope. Okay, so I'm just going to pull that slope out and keep it exactly as it is because the slopes are equal. So my slope is equal to negative 3 halves. Okay, and then I have my point x1, y1. So x1 is negative 2, y1 is 0. So I plugged those values directly into my equation, right? So I have my slope, my x, and my y numbers. I plug those directly in. Okay, so I have y minus 0 equals negative 3 halves x, and it was x minus negative 2, and I changed those to plus positive, right? And then I used the distributive property, right? Multiplied the negative 3 halves through. So 2 times negative 3 halves is minus 3. And then when you have a y minus 0, remember, you can just eliminate it, right? Anything minus 0 is that same number, right? Or in this case, same variable. So if you ever see minus 0 or plus 0, you can just delete it, right? So my final answer here is y equals negative 3 halves x minus 3. All right. Let's take a look at part E, and then I'm actually going to do part F because it's a little bit of a different type of problem because the equation that they give you looks a little different, okay? So part E, I want to find the equation of a line that's perpendicular to this equation that they gave me, but they still gave me this point, okay? So again, I'm still going to use point slope form, okay? So I have x1, y1. Okay, I'm still pulling out the slope in the original equation, but I can't just keep it how it is. I have to make some changes to it. I have to flip the fraction and change the sign to get my new slope. Okay, so if my old slope was -5, there's no fraction, so I'm going to say divided by 1, -5/1. Okay, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to flip the fraction. Okay, so that becomes 1/5. If the original was negative, that means the new slope is positive. So that's my m, right? And then I have x1 is -5 and y1 is 3. Okay, so I end up with y minus 3 equals 1/5 times x minus -5. I'm going to change my two minus signs to plus signs that are right next to each other. I'm going to use my distributive property and multiply through. So you end up with y minus 3 equals 1/5 x plus 1. And then I'm going to add 3 to both sides, just like that. So your final value here is, your final equation is y equals 1/5 x plus 4. All right, so that's your final equation. That's your final answer. Again, because we're trying to write an equation of a line. So once you get an answer that looks like y equals mx plus b, then you are done with the problem. All right, so let's look at F. This one's definitely a slightly different type of problem and very kind of an interesting problem. Okay, so they gave me a point, but my y, or my original equation, has no slope. It's just y equals 4. Okay, so if I think about this, right, and I'm on a coordinate plane, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the x-axis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, y equals 4 is the equation of a horizontal line. Okay, because y equals 4 means that the x could be any value. So x could be any value along this axis, but y has to be equal to 4. Okay, so if that's the case, then you have a horizontal line. Okay, so this is the line y equals 4. Okay, all right, so that's the first part of this. So if the original line is horizontal, then the new line has to be vertical. Okay, and that will be x equals something. Okay, so it'll be a vertical line, but we have to figure out what vertical line it is, right? The other piece of information that they gave me was that it goes through the point 2, 2. So that is this point right here. Okay, so it's got to be a vertical line going through that point. So it would look something like this, right? So this is x equals a number, and it'll be y is changing all along that vertical line, but the x value stays the same, and the x value is always equal to 2. So that is your final answer, right? Your final answer is that x is equal to 2. That is the equation of that line, okay? Right? If it said parallel, right, you would have another horizontal line, right? So you just have to be careful, make sure you look at what they are asking you to find, if they want you to find a parallel or a perpendicular line. All right, so give me just a moment. I'm gonna clear my screen off, and we're gonna do a couple more practice problems. Most of the difficult math was here. In these practice problems. We're going to look at some multiple choice questions now. So I will see you back here in just a moment. All right, folks, so I'm actually going to do these problems a little bit out of order. So I'm actually going to start with number 5 because I have to do a little bit of calculating for that one. It's asking me to find the slope. So if you're asked to find the slope, that's slope formula. So I'm going to do number 5 here, and then I'll do an example of a multiple choice question, number 6. And then I'll give you a little bit of time. We'll pause the video. and give you some time to figure out the other multiple choice questions. And you'll be able to come back and check to see if you're correct, okay? So let's look at number 5 and find the slope of line T, which you can see in this lovely picture right here. So remember, to find the slope of something, right, the slope of a line is y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1, okay? So here you just want to pick your points. So I'm going to call this point here in the top left corner to be my point number 1, and then this one here to be my point number 2. Very important that you, whichever point you choose to be 2, whichever one you choose to be 1, that you keep them in the same order when you subtract them, okay? So slope of this line would be y2, which is 1. So 1 minus y1, which is 3, divided by x2, which is 2, minus x1, which is negative 4. Okay, so I have 2 minus signs here in the denominator. I'm going to change them both to plus signs. All right, so I end up with 1 minus 3, which is negative 2, divided by 2 plus 4 is 6. And then I really should reduce my fraction a little bit. So I'm going to reduce my fraction. And when I do, I get that this is negative 1/3. So that is my slope. Okay. Another way you could have done that is you definitely could have done it visually if you wanted to. So if you are more of a visual person and you have a graph and you like to visualize things that way, you can just count your rise and your run. Okay, so we went down 2, so that's your rise, minus 2, and we went to the right 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So rise 6 would be your run, right? So then you end up with negative 2 divided by 6, just like when you use the formula. All right. So let's take a look at number 6 here. I'm going to do this one as an example, and then I want you to try the other multiple choice questions, okay? So 6 says, which of the following represents a line parallel to line T? Okay, so remember, line T has a slope of negative 1/3. So if they are parallel, then that means I need a slope. The slope in the line has to equal negative 1/3. Okay, so if I look, option A has a slope of negative 1, so that's not right. C has a slope of positive 1/3, so that's not right. D has a slope of positive 1, again, not right. And option B here has a slope of negative 1/3. All right, so you have number 7 that I want you to try, as well as these slightly easier ones at the top here, 2, 3, and 4. So give those a try and then come back and see if you got them correct. All right, folks, so on the screen, you can see your answers for 2, 3, and 4. So 2 says I have a line with a slope of 1/3. They want to know what's the slope of a line perpendicular to PQ. So remember, perpendicular is flip the fraction and change the sign. So 1/3 becomes 3/1. And then since the original was positive, I need to change the new one to negative. So my new slope is negative 3/1, which is just negative 3. So A is the right answer for that one. Number 3 says this line VW has a slope of 5, and they want to know what's the slope of a line parallel to VW. So remember, parallel lines should have the same slope, so D is the correct answer for that one. Number 4 says, which of the following is not an equation for a line parallel to y equals 1/2 x minus 6? Okay, so parallel lines have the same slope. So if it's not parallel, they do not have the same slope. So I want to figure out which of these options has a slope that is not equal to 1/2. Well, option C is easy to eliminate because you see the 1/2 right there. So I can eliminate that one. In option A, 2/4 is the same as 1/2. So I can eliminate that one. And in option B, 0.5 is equal to 1/2. So I can eliminate that one. So D is my answer there because 2 is obviously not equal to 1/2. All right, and then my very last question here That's number 7 at the bottom, going back to our line T, right? So 7 asks, which of the following is a line that's perpendicular to line T? So the slope of line T, as you recall, was negative 1/3. So that means the new slope, if it's perpendicular, I have to flip the fraction and change the sign. So my new slope is positive 3/1, which is just 3. So the only answer choice that has 3 as a slope is option D. All right, y'all, so that is it on your practice problems video for slopes of parallel and perpendicular lines. I will see you in the next video. Bye, everyone.